Here at the scene of the crime spree, right behind you.
Strange.
Vice Mayor Strange, you'll address her properly.
You can kiss my foot.
Mr. Rickard, you're out of order.
FBI, we are asking you to investigate this council. Please look into this council, how they award contracts, the bid process, how they use their positions to benefit their friends and themselves, how they use their positions to attack residents and critics and neighbors and business competition. FBI, will you please look into this?
And I welcome the FBI here. If you notice, Mr. Thompson with his plea for the FBI and his watchdog group, this city runs the cleanest in this whole county. I guarantee
He was served a federal subpoena this morning.
Did receive a subpoena this morning, and we're going to cooperate 100% with the subpoena.
And most of you who were involved up here, you gaslighted me. You tried to say I was crazy. And now we know that that's not true. And there's a lot of other issues I've been asking about as well.
It's a hot time in Florida. Oh, this is going to be such a good show. Are you ready for this? So I've been telling you that in Bay County, in the government of Bay County, there is something known as a builder services fund. And this fund, which comes from fees that the county charges to builders and contractors, can only be spent on that. It can only be used according to state statute, which I'm going to show you. It can only be used. You want to see it right now? So the state statute that governs the Builder Services Fund for all 67 counties throughout Florida and the cities, there are 412 of them. Here's what it says with regard to that money. Now, let's start with that. I want you to see this. All right, it is state statute state statute 553.80, actually, 553.80 7A. All right, that's the statute. And here's what you'll see. I've underlined the important part. These fees and any fines or investment earnings related to the fees shall, not may, shall be used solely for carrying out the local government's responsibility in enforcing the Florida Building Code. The money that is collected in fees from the builders and contractors can only be used inside that area on training, on equipment, on that sort of stuff. There's currently about $8.5 million in the Builder Services Fund. The Builder Services Fund, the county can roll over the average of the last 4 years. All right. So if $8.5 million is about the average of the last 4 years, if they've got that much remaining, they can roll it over, but it can only be used. Okay, this is important. This is one of the tricks that was done today on the radio show. Does this say that these fees shall be spent solely on carrying out the local government's responsibilities or used? It says used. And in law, words are very important. And remember, they can only carry over the average of the last 4 years. Well, in 2019, let me get back. Now you've seen that. That is state statute 553.80, section 7A. So in 2019, the year following Hurricane Michael, which occurred in October of 2018, there was an unusual influx of revenue. There was a lot of it. I don't know if it was doubled or what it was, but there was a lot more than 8.5 million in the Builder Services Fund. That is what we're talking about from 2019. And I showed you the quote from Commissioner, who was the chairman at the time, Griff Griffiths, who was running for state representative, which is why this is an issue. He said that the Builder Services Fund has a lot of money in those accounts right now. We will place an IOU in those accounts if we need to. So they want to borrow. They wanted to borrow money from the Builder Services Fund since they had so much in there that year. But the Builder Services Fund cannot be used as a bank. It can only be used, remember, solely for carrying out the local government's responsibilities in enforcing the building code, not for Hurricane Michael repairs. That's important. And the reason this whole thing is an issue is because Griff is running for state representative now. He's a county commissioner. He was the chairman at the time. And I keep asking where the $8.7 million that was taken out of the Builder Services Fund, where did it go? Now we're going to get some answers from the Bay County manager, Bob Micah, who was on the radio show today, and from the comptroller, who is the clerk of courts, Bill Kinsall. Bill Kinsall and Bob Micah went on News Talk 101 this morning, and the radio host, Brian Rust, interviewed them. It didn't sound to me like there was a commercial for like 50 minutes, which is unheard of. This was a very important hour to bypass commercials. I don't think they had a commercial. You're going to hear the entire interview. I want to play the entire interview. So they came on, and I will tell you now, I am surprised. And to Brian Rust's credit, he did say my name. Usually they're not allowed to say my name. He did say my name. This is where this question is emanating from. The fact that I found it in a lawsuit. Here's the lawsuit. That is the lawsuit. It is the third amended complaint. Geisen Construction, Inc. and Aloha Building Contracting, LLC, on behalf of themselves and a class of individuals and entities who are similarly situated versus Bay County, Florida. That's the lawsuit. And these contractors have sued the county because in 2019 and before, the county was charging fees for private inspections on new construction. That's against the law. Also within statute 553.80, it specifically says that the county can only charge the actual costs of government building inspectors. Okay. So the county was charging the ever living out of these contractors. They had a humongous influx into the Builder Services Fund in 2019, well above the 8.5 million that's in it now. And they took money out of it and put it into reserve funds. County manager Bob Micah and comptroller and clerk of courts Bill Kinsall will attest to that in the interview on the Brian Rust radio show this morning. But remember, I showed you in state statute 553.80, section 7A, that these fees and any fines or investment earnings related to the fees shall be used solely for carrying out the local government's responsibilities in enforcing the Florida Building Code. In other words, the Builder Services Fund is not a bank for the county to borrow money from and put in other funds, like a reserve fund. Okay, so we've got the setup now, right? Brian Rust brought these guys on the show, was told to bring them on the show. And they went on there and said stuff that you're not going to believe. Now, to Brian Rust's credit, he did ask, and it surprised the ever living out of me, he did ask the very specific questions that he should have asked. His follow-ups they were lacking, but that's because Brian Rust doesn't know what I know. It's understandable. So his follow-up questions weren't very good. And also either he couldn't or wouldn't call them when their answers were very sneaky. But now that you know what I've just set up, we're going to listen to the entire interview on the Brian Rush Show. And I'll stop it and point a few things out right after this.
You want to look good? You want to feel good? Little John's Big and Tall is where it's at. Right across the street from Sky's Pizza Pie, 5700 North Davis Highway. You can find out more online at littlejohnsbigandtall.com. He's also a member of the iTex trading community, where your iTex dollars are welcome.
Hand caught in the cookie jar? Sometimes bad habits continue even into adulthood. I'm El Saline, 850-215-0628. Let me help you.
All right, one more thing as we go to the interview this morning on News Talk 101. I will tell you that, and you'll hear him say it, the host of the show, he only, in doing his research and getting to the truth, he only talked to the county. So he brought on the big guns, right? He brought up the comptroller, the clerk of courts, Bill Kinsall, and the county manager, Bob Micah. The only other person that would have been fantastic on the show would have been Griff Griffiths, who was the chairman of the county commission at the time and who made the statement in the newspaper about taking the money and leaving an IOU. But what Brian Russ did by only going to the government and not going to me or the contractors who filed the class action lawsuit or anybody else, he's essentially going to the fox who guarded the hen house and saying, hey, Fox, are there any missing eggs? Understand that that's what happened. And that's not journalism. And Brian Rust should be a journalist. You say, no, Bernie, he's just a talk show host. He's just a news personality, media personality. Still, that is under the big umbrella of journalism. He's not a straight news reporter. He's not a broadcast journalist, but he's a talk show host. And we have an obligation to show the facts. And I've been guilty of this too, by the way. So, hey, look, I also fall under these same ethical responsibilities. And there have been times where I didn't make a call to the other side because it's clear they won't talk to me. Usually I make assumptions and I shouldn't. So anytime I've done that, where I didn't contact the other side when they are a subject of the story, not a byproduct of the story but an actual subject of the story, we have a responsibility to reach out. I've been guilty of that myself, and that is a fair criticism of me and a shortcoming that I'm guilty of at times. So, but what I don't do is what all the local news outlets do. I do not go only to the government and say, hey, government, you're the official source. Did you do it or not? Hey, Fox, did you take any eggs from the hen house? And that's what Brian Rust did today. So let's listen to the two foxes that Brian Rust brought on the radio show to ask about those eggs that were taken. And let me not go anymore. Let's listen to this. All right, let's start from the beginning.
There's an important thing that I think we need to address a little bit. And, this is something that I've actually talked about it a little bit in the past, but we want to get into a little bit more detail about it. And this is something that one of our local watchdogs, Bernie Thompson, has covered a lot. And he's talked about it a lot. I can't believe he said
my name.
And this is one of these things that there's been a lot of accusations going around. And this is something that I think is important enough that we need to really, truly address this. And that is the allegation of some missing money coming out of the county. An $8.7 million is what is being accused of being missing from the Building Services Fund. Want to welcome to the show Bob Micah and Bill Kinsall from the county. Gentlemen, good morning.
Good morning.
I couldn't figure if anybody better than the two of you and maybe the county lawyer to talk about this and address some of the issues. And I want to go about.
Hey, Brian, how about maybe somebody outside the somebody outside the government? Couldn't think of anybody better than those accused.
This and really just kind of get to some facts, because Mr. Thompson has accused the county commission and Griff Griffiths of misappropriating or stealing or misusing or whatever it might be this $8.7 million.
What I am saying is that $8.7 million, according to a forensic audit from the lawsuit I showed you, was taken from the Builder Services Fund and put into some reserve fund. And that is illegal. That is my claim.
And I want to start off with this, and I'm not sure. I know, Bill, you're the comptroller, so you are the money guy when it comes to the county. So I'm going to point blank ask you, is there $8.7 million missing from the Building Services Fund?
Good question.
Well, I would start off saying it's a loaded question. It's not really even a question. It's a fallacy, a logical fallacy that you just throw it out there. And it's like accusing somebody, hey, have you stopped beating your wife? Yeah. That just throwing it out there. The answer to that question is that it's not even a question. Mm-hmm. We look at those invoices. The comptroller, the clerk report role is set up to be completely independent from the county and the commission and the county manager. They don't work for me. I don't work for them. Their invoices come over there and we look at those. If there was something even down to sometimes to the penny missing, we were over there, I would be beating the drum of what's happened. So this is just rhetoric. Like I said, it's just a logical fallacy that the answer to the question is it's not a question.
So there's no money.
Here's a very important point. And somebody, I knew it, but somebody contacted me today and said, I used to run a nonprofit, and what they're doing is trying to make the issue about balancing the bottom line rather than misappropriation of funds. Remember, the statute said that they cannot use money from the builder services fee for anything but on the builder services fee. They can't use the builder services fee as a bank. It's very important to understand that when the two smart guys, Bob Micah is smart, Bill Kinsall is probably smart. I don't know him as well, but I bet he is. They're smarter than Brian. I know Brian. And this is a little trick that they're playing on everybody, and I want you to pay attention to that.
Money missing, essentially.
No, our office has internal auditor, and in the process of upgrading that to an inspector general position.
Oh, they have more foxes.
County issues internally. We have external auditors that produce our CAFR, which is the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report.
And that is Carr, Riggs, and Ingram. Carr, Riggs, and Ingram. I don't want to get into that whole story, but a lot of the local governments hired a big accounting firm owned by Bill Carr, Carr, Riggs, and Ingram. Bill Carr is also a hotel developer who got that special deal when Mike Thomas, the former mayor of Panama City Beach, during a vote, traded a road for a height incentive. So Bill Carr is also a hotel developer, and that's who they have doing their annual audits. And remember, Carr, Riggs, and Ingram have an article from a couple of years ago explaining to people that an annual audit is not like a forensic audit. It is, they take a sample and they look at bottom lines. They do not look at what we're talking about. Carr, Riggs, and Ingram themselves said that in an article.
Pour over these, and it would be something that would be absolutely glaring for that amount.
Yeah.
So yes, that is just complete rhetoric, just throwing it out there and using terms like disappeared. I mean, that's just foolish to think that would go through or something like that.
Yeah, because I when I first heard this come up, I thought to myself, how in the world is that much money missing from a fund. And, you know,
It was taken from the fund. It was misappropriated from the fund.
I have done a lot of research on this, probably upwards of 20 hours worth of research on this particular topic. I have talked with lawyers. I have read, you know, the comprehensive report, the comprehensive annual financial report, not only for 21, but I read it for 20.
Well, bless you.
19 and 18. So needless to say, my mind is a little bit at mush at this point from trying to read all this. And
I'll say.
And nobody that I have talked to within the government, none of the stuff that I have read has indicated that there's any missing money whatsoever.
Really? No, nobody within the government has indicated there's any missing money. All right. He's talked to Fox after Fox after Fox asking if any of the eggs are missing from the hen house.
So how it's set up, which I don't know, a few people around the county probably understand the clerk's role, and that a lot of people don't even know that when they see me at the commission meetings, like, why is the clerk report at the commission meeting, that all things financial, at the bottom line of financial numbers, all bills are paid at the clerk's office, all the assets, everything, all the financial side other than budget is handled at the clerk's office. So things can differ from the budget. The budget is handled on the commission side. And over the years since I've been clerk, we've had things that have completely blown up our budgets. And so what we're expecting at the beginning of the year is not what happens at the end of the year, but that something's missing is that's just not, like I said, go back, that's just a fallacy. And
oh, by the way, I need to tell you this. Today, I sent an email to Commissioner Griffiths, and I asked to have a sit-down conversation with the county's budget director and who you're listening to right now, the clerk of courts, Bill Kinsall, who's also the comptroller. And to my surprise, the county said yes. So Thursday morning, I am scheduled to sit down with the clerk of courts and the budget director to ask questions about this. So I got to say, kudos to the county. I'll be there.
And it's that, I mean, since I've been there, we've had oil spill. 2008 just completely blew up our budget in the housing market, and then a Cat 5 hurricane. So things, our budgets have been very flexible. Absolutely. Because of, seems like every 2 or 3 years, we're dealing with something on the catastrophic level. We're just hoping for some normal years. So that's the difference when you're talking about budget and what actually ends at the end of the year. But so, to throw out the, like I said, just the rhetoric that missing and disappeared, that's not the case.
So when you brought up an interesting word, inflexible, because one of the things that that has also been accused is that you know, Commissioner Griffith would write an IOU to put into the building services fund and use that money. Is it possible for whether it be a commission chairman or the commission as a whole to be able to be flexible with that funds and say, take money out of a building services fund and then use it for hurricane recovery and then get the money refunded and put it back? Is that even possible to be done?
Yes. So you're going to lose half your audience if we start talking about government accounting and silos
I know,
of money.
It's a tough one.
And what money can be lent to other funds and not, and things like that. So builder services and some of the others are, and water funds are, those are enterprise funds, which enterprise fund is to make money off the fees. And then you have other funds that are just your general governmental, like your general fund. And so some of those, the statutes and the rules around some of those.
So this fund is the Builder Services Fund. I showed you at the beginning the statute that said that it shall, the fees collected in that fund shall be used solely for the Builder Services Department, for the building department. It does not say that the money can be used as a loan. It's pretty clear. This is not one of those flexible accounts.
Those funds, you can lend money to those funds, you can lend money, or you can take money from those funds to lend, but at the end, it all has to wash out. Some of them are not flexible. For instance, like TDC, beach renourishment, that is untouchable. That penny goes in there, and that's to be saved and invested until it's time to renourish the beaches.
Like the
It's
Builder Services
completely
Fund.
Inflexible. Others, if it's doing well, you can borrow from that. I think
You see how sneaky he's being? He's not saying that the Builder Services Fund is one of those. Are you catching this? He never says that the Builder Services Fund can be used that way. And if he does say it, he's got some answering to do.
in years past, we have taken some money, not taken, but you loan it out to whether it's retail water or some other fund, I believe, something like that in years past. And then
Really?
that money is paid back or is either paid back from the general fund. So you'd have flexibility, just like in your household budget. But for the most part, governmental funds are very rigid. And if it goes in there, it has to stay in there. But some of the funds are flexible, and you can do that.
Okay. And if anybody wants to actually learn more about, the particular building services thing, there is a state statute that has a lot in there, and it's kind of confusing. I mean, I think I've read it like 4 or 5 times, and it's
State Statute 553.80, Section 7A.
it makes you scratch your head a little bit. And it does lay out, what that money is supposed to be for and what it's not supposed to be for. So it is possible to borrow the money from building services as long as it is returned. Am I getting?
Oh, there's the question. There's the question. Remember what the state statute said. We'll have to hear his answer to that. Can you take it from that particular fund? Well, I can't wait to hear this answer right after this.
Don't let back pain and neck pain get you down. Find relief at Brown Chiropractic Center on St. Andrews Boulevard in Panama City. Dr. Sherry Brown helps people heal naturally with chiropractic adjustments and deep tissue massage. Call 769-3777. It's a hot time in Florida, and my friend Ryan could make sure your air conditioning is running at peak efficiency. He could even install a new one, built to a higher standard, American standard. Find out more at PCAirrepair.com.
All right, Brian Rust asked a good question. Is the Building Services Fund one of those funds you can borrow money from and pay back with interest? Can you use that fund like a bank? Great question, Brian.
Getting that correct?
Right. And then on a whole nother bigger scale is that we have something years and years ago. This was
Answer.
before I was a clerk, went to a model called pooled cash. So all of our, all the monies are considered in like one pooled area. That way, if something is during the middle of the year, if something were to go into, say, the negative or deficit for at least that particular month or something, back in the old days, you might have to have a line of credit that you would have to go hit at your local bank, your community bank.
So did Bill Kinsall just say that the county uses the Builder Services Fund as a pooled account that they can borrow money from? He just said that, didn't he?
And then pay interest on that. So now we do the same thing just within funds, and we calculate if it's something that goes for a period of time, that the funds you're using it from, the fund that borrowed it has to pay interest back to the fund where we took it from to make it completely whole. So whatever the prevailing interest rate is, you have to pay that fund back with interest.
Okay.
So it's not like you're just, because it's, yes, building permits in that particular department or retail water or wholesale water, you're not just going to use the money without them being paid back and paid back with interest with future value.
He just said that they use the money as a loan. You remember what state statute said? Shall solely be used in the Builder Services Fund. It didn't say, and also as a bank. For one department to borrow from another department. It didn't say that. Can't do that.
after value with that money.
Okay. That's kind of interesting that and government financing is just so confusing.
Oh,
you know, it's probably worse than anything. And Bob, I don't know if you can answer this question. Maybe Bill, you can. Did we take money out of the building services for anything for hurricane recovery?
Good question.
Some of it, as Bill said, globally, it's in pooled cash. And, you know, you can imagine right after the hurricane, you know, the amount of devastation. You know, one of the things that we're also subject to in Florida is what's referred to as the Prompt Payment Services Act, right? So, and unless that gets waived, which eventually we were able to get the governor to include waiver of that several months after landfall in one of the executive orders. But initially, early on, when you receive an invoice for a service that's been provided, that contractor has the right to be paid within 30 days. And so you have to have float to do that. And you can imagine tens of millions of dollars that had to be spent. And it was right there at the beginning of our.
You have to have float to do that? So you're floating money? Did Bob Micah really just say you are floating money from the Builder Services Fund? I think he just said that.
Our budget year. It happened the very first part of October. So yes, we used pooled cash until we secured our disaster loans, which was several months later. We I think initially went out for a little over 100 million the first draw. So yeah, our cash, it's you know, we have it in reserves. But it's pooled. So it on the in the budget, it's in specific reserves within funds. But as Bill said, globally, you know, sitting in the bank, it's in pooled cash, and as he indicated, those funds have to be paid back when that funding is used. So that's exactly why it's there. It's for emergency.
So the reason there was this lawsuit in the first place, right here, the reason that this class action lawsuit happened in the first place is because the county was overcharging the contractors in 2019 and 2018. They were charging them fees where they should never they never had the authority to charge them fees. Okay. And then with all of the extra money that the Builder Services Fund had was not supposed to be used as a bank. It was supposed to be used. It was supposed to be refunded to the overcharged contractors and builders. That's why this lawsuit happened. But they were using it as a bank.
Emergency purposes, it's for those unforeseen purposes. It's also for future planning purposes. With the building fund in particular, they're responsible for paying their own way. So when it comes time to replace their vehicles, we're, for example, right now going through a software upgrade, replacing laptops, office furniture, things that fund has to pay for itself. And so we carry a reserve for future capital outlay in that fund as well, so that it pays its own way.
Okay.
Wait. You use that fund for future capital.
Here's something else that
wait. You use that fund for future capital outlay? Hopefully only within the builder department, Bob. Building department. Because it can't be used outside the. Oh, this is going to be interesting. I'll have some questions on Thursday morning when I sit down with the county.
That has been talked about a lot. And that's audits of the money. You know, Bill, you mentioned the comprehensive annual financial report, or the CAFR. The last one for 2021 has the building services at about $8.5 million and some change for its, you know, its end amount, I guess, at the end of that particular audit. And if you go to your website, you can find it. It's a very easy thing. It's on page B13, where that lays out that amount of money. Mm-hmm. What is the difference? Because we're hearing that a forensic audit was done.
This is super interesting. Okay. This lawsuit, there was a forensic audit done. And in the forensic audit, they found $8.7 million missing. And I find it, I'm not going to call these guys liars. I'm not. But if the county is in a lawsuit, you would think that the county manager and the comptroller would know about the forensic audit on the Builder Services Department. You'd think they'd know.
What is the difference between a forensic audit and the comprehensive annual fiscal.
I believe that goes back to what we were talking about earlier, just rhetoric and loaded questions using terms like forensic audit or disappearing. That's just to get people stirred up and to think that, it's usually you hear a forensic audit when there's fraud or something like that is going on. So, if there is one out there, me and my finance officer in my office, we would love to look at it and sit down and find out. No one has contacted me, and no one that I know of, and I'm pretty sure I would be at least the second person contacted in my office.
Right.
Would be if there was something like that going on. Like I said, we pay all the.
Remember that when there's a lawsuit, especially about money like this, the plaintiffs, they get all of the financial documents that they want. So they make a request for all the production. They get the financial documents. They got everything. Bill, they don't need to talk to you. They don't need to talk to the county man. They have everything. And they get to look at what you guys said you did with that money, and does it square? And not only that, is it misappropriated according to state statute? Are you using the money from the Builder Services Fund for things that are not authorized by state statute, things that are prohibited by state statute? But I still find it hard to believe that the comptroller and the county manager didn't know about it.
All that we pay every invoice that the county is paid for the county
not the
comes
question.
through my office. It has my signature on it, has the chairman of the board's signature on it. Every invoice comes through my office. So if
That would be
some sort of audit or something.
The chairman of the board was Griff Griffiths.
Something happening, the first place I think somebody would call would be my office.
Right.
And I would be more than willing to shut the doors and look at something like that.
So
I would be on the front page of the paper.
Yes,
I would be the one beating the drum saying something, hey, time out. We need to figure out what's going on.
So how would somebody, if somebody was to do a forensic audit or wanted to do an audit on things, because I know that with the lawsuit that's currently going on with the contractors, which has to do with the building services, and that's an ongoing thing. So I understand that, a lot of that really can't be talked about because it is an ongoing thing. I've talked to the lawyers of the county, and, they've assured me that, this is pretty much just kind of a business as usual kind of thing, because it's just one of those things that happened. It's a lot more details than I got time to go into, but it's something that'll end up being settled and taken care of. But how would
why would it be settled and taken care of if there's nothing wrong? Do you settle a lawsuit if there's not something there? If there's no there, do you settle a lawsuit? So Brian Russ says he's talked to the county attorneys. Has he talked to the contractors' attorneys about the forensic audit? So let's see what the county attorneys have to say about the forensic audit.
Would somebody go about doing like an audit, a forensic audit on the county? They do have to go through you, or, I mean, how would that go?
Well, that would all depend on what they're looking for, what records, what invoices. But I would say it would go through, if it's a financial matter. I said I would 100% think they would start at the finance office. I mean,
hey, Clerk of Courts Bill Kinsall. It goes through production of the lawsuit. They've got all the financial records of the county, and I'm sure you had to provide a bunch of them.
I mean, that makes sense to me. So if they're looking for something financial, you would go to the finance office, which would be with us, and ask us for copies of invoices. Or
so this will be a question I ask on Thursday. Did you provide the production in the lawsuit?
Or if I said, pull up the records and look at our audit, start with the CAFR, we would have in that comprehensive financial report, there would be a huge note in there. I mean, that wouldn't even be a note. I mean, that would be just everything would come to a stop, something like that.
Okay.
So I just can't say enough. It just comes back to it. It's just a fallacy. It's just something to get something stirred up
Mhm.
and throw it, and especially the words used to even talk about this.
Right.
So,
So I did talk with the county lawyers as well. When it came to this this alleged forensic audit, they don't know anything about it. And you would think that the attorneys would probably know as well. It has been implicated that it had something to do with the contractors and their lawsuit. However, I've been informed that the lawyers for the contractors have also been asked, "Hey, have you guys done a forensic audit or an audit?" And they have said no.
Don't forget this. This is Mark 101.20 or so. Brian Rust just said on the radio during his show today that the contractors, I'm writing this down, lawyers, don't ever forget this, okay, said no forensic audit has been done. Here's the beautiful thing about time. Brian Rust can say this on the radio, and he can have the foxes guarding the hen house in here to back him up. But here's the beautiful thing about time is that the truth will have its day. I've heard it said that time is an appellate judge. So Brian Rust just said that the contractors' lawyers have said no forensic audit has been done at the 101.20 mark of his show today. Mark it, and don't forget that was said.
There's accusations that there was a subpoena that was sent out for all this stuff. And again, the lawyers have told me that no, there was never a subpoena. However, as standard operation, when it comes to a lawsuit, there was a motion for discovery. And part of that, all of the financial information that was given to the legal team for the lawsuit was the publicly available CAFRs that can be found on your website.
Right.
So apparently nobody even knows of anything about any subpoenas, no forensic audit. So I'm just not sure about all of this, of where this is all really truly coming from.
well, this reminds
Well, Brian, maybe you should talk to somebody other than the government itself.
me of a story, and I mentioned it to Bob when we were walking in. When I first took over office, so well back way when I was first hired, the budget director, her name was Mary, and then over the years she retired, and then Ashley became the budget director, and we would always go into the meeting, myself and finance officer at the time, and at our annual meetings talking about the budget and going over getting ready for the auditors to come in or the exit interview with the auditors. And we'd always tease Ashley that, there was that Mary had hidden away $5 million. And we would just say that in the meetings and tease Ashley. And it would always make him squirm. And he wasn't sure if everybody in the room knew that I was kidding and the finance office were kidding. But it was always something just to make, it was an inside joke to make Ashley squirm. And that's exactly what's going on here. It's nothing, there's nothing to it. It's just
Oh, just a
that-
joke.
It's like I said before, there's not an answer to the question because there's never a question.
There's no
So-
question. So there's no question. It's all just a big joke. Bernie Thompson and his jokes. And his jokes are not funny. The question is, and you guys, here's the contradiction, right? There's no question. $8.7 million was not taken from the Builder Services Fund and used for anything else other than what it was allowed to be used for. I just showed you state statute said you can't use it as a bank. But it's all just a big joke. And they keep trying to change what the issue is. The issue is what Griff Griffiths, who was the chairman at the time, said in the News Herald. You all took money that was inflated in 2019 in the Builder Services Fund, and you borrowed money within the county, one fund to another. Now you guys call it pooled funds. Is the Builder Services Fund permitted or prohibited by state statute to be pooled with your general fund? I cannot believe they're saying this on the radio. This is phenomenal. Brian Rust, in a sense, great job.
That's what this is.
What if there was money that was obviously missing or something that showed up in one of the reports? What is the action that happens with that? What goes on if the CPA that the company that the county uses comes back with this report and says, "Hey, we're missing $100,000 or $1 million or whatever." What is the next process for that?
Oh,
That's a good question. I want to hear that answer too. I got to hear what the answer is to that. I think this is where Bob Micah comes in.
Americans for Prosperity is the largest grassroots organization advancing policies that help people improve their lives. AFP Florida seeks to end corporate welfare, expand energy options, and reform education and healthcare by giving people more choices. Sign up today and volunteer at americansforprosperity.org.
Another good question by Brian Rust. What happens if there's an irregularity in the budget? What happens if there's a problem, if money's missing?
If we're out of balance, I mean, it's all hands on deck. We are pouring over every single check that's written, every general ledger. Everybody's on deck until they find out, where it is until we're in balance.
And I think it's important to point out too that would result in a material finding in the
Oh
audit.
my God.
And the CAFR isn't just available online, and it's just not provided to myself and the county commission every year. It's also filed with the Auditor General of the state of Florida. So there would be a hearing in Tallahassee if that amount of money was missing, and the county commission would be required to stand tall in front of that board and account to the public as to where that money went.
Missing, borrowed, misappropriated, all of these things are a major problem for them.
In addition to the accountability that we would have to represent to the clerk's office.
Yeah, and again, throwing out the term disappeared, that would be like you
He's stuck on that.
CAFR with a big asterisk. Oh, $8 million. We couldn't find it. There's no way that would publish. There's no way we would get it. It would still be open.
Mhm.
That we would have a write up every year till we found out what happened with that. That would not. You wouldn't close the books.
Right.
I mean, it just wouldn't. It would just be. We would still be pouring over the number.
And then, like Bob said, that this is a report that goes to the state of Florida for them to review it. So even if they were to open this up and say, "Hey, where's this $8.7 million?" they'd be crawling all over you.
Oh, on top of that, it goes to every lender in the nation. So when we go out and we were bonding money during the hurricane of hundreds of millions of dollars, and if they saw a financial report that said you're missing $8 million, they would have said, we're not loaning you anything. And we have some of the best interest rates and credit ratings in the country. So that would be a red flag. It would be we'd have to go to the pawn shop for money. And
You see how they've got you off the trail right there, talking about something else entirely.
and banks are beating down our door to loan money to us because they know we have sound reporting. We have, internal auditors looking at internal auditors, looking at auditors.
Mm-hmm.
So they have internal auditors looking at internal auditors looking at A lot of foxes in the hen house.
I mean, we have auditors. We have an office set up for our auditors. They're almost our employees. They're in there so much.
I'll
And
bet.
it's just routine for them to come into us like, "Hey, what's this? Why'd you do this?" It is. We are under the microscope 9 months out of the year. They're in there just digging in they're looking at every invoice. They have access these days. Every invoice is scanned, and they
9 months out of the year.
So how often are things balanced and reviewed? Is this something that's done on a daily basis, weekly basis, quarterly basis? How do you guys keep an eye on it for the transparency of where the money is?
I would say it's a constant balance. So somebody is looking at these constantly.
So if there was money
it's
that
not
was
like running a report every single day and look at, but
Right.
constantly.
so if there was money that was not showing up, like $100 or 100,000.
Hey, Brian, how about if there's money that is borrowed from the Builder Services Fund, contrary to state statute? How about if the state Builder Services Fund in 2019, because it had a higher influx of money that was way outside of the average? How about if that's being used as a bank? Stay on point, Brian.
$1,000, whatever, it would be discovered relatively quickly.
Right.
So what's the
out of balance? Now, that's a
Right,
different
out of
thing.
balance.
So on a different hat I put on, for instance, a long time ago, we had something on the court side, which we have financial matters on the court side. And a traffic citation is broken down into, when we collect the money for a traffic ticket, I think it's up to about 16 different little categories. Like, this agency gets $1, that agency gets $1, and the software is very complicated. And one time we had an upgrade or something, and it miscalculated on the traffic citations, and we had to go back and fix that. And so it was calculated wrong, or it was inputted wrong, or the import, whatever. So we had to send out like quite a few refunds, but it was still, at the end of the year, we balanced to that different amount. Later on, we found out there was a computer error and fixed that. So it balanced with the new amount, but there was nothing disappeared. It was just a wrong calculation or misinterpretation of the statute from our office and our association in Tallahassee.
Okay.
But it still is balancing.
All right. So the basic bottom line is that with all of the audits that you guys are doing, there's no missing $8.7 million. If it was, the state in Tallahassee would be notified because they would get the report. The reports are there. There's been no forensic audit that anybody connected with the county seems to be aware of. Even going as far as the lawsuit for the construction company, their lawyers have denied any knowledge of any sort of a forensic audit that has been done. Now,
okay, don't forget that. Now we're at the 108:45 mark or so. Brian Rust said that the lawyers for the contractors in that lawsuit, this one right here, Brian Rust just said that their lawyers deny that there was a forensic audit done that identified $8.7 million that was missing from the Builder Services Fund in the way that they were supposed to spend that money. He just said that, didn't he? Brian Rust just said that the lawyers denied any forensic audit. Now, when it comes to credibility in the future, don't forget this.
Now, granted, it may be a situation where they did get the CAFRs and reviewed him, but that really wouldn't be a forensic audit. So it does kind of seem like this is just coming
if they hired a forensic auditor, Brian, yes, it would.
out of nowhere with no real teeth to the missing money concept. And like you guys both said, and I'm just trying to clarify everything too, that it is possible to move money from fund to fund to pay for certain things. But in your words, and this is such an old-fashioned word because nobody knows what balance is, like balance your checkbook, to balance it all out, that at the end of the day, all the money has got to be there. And if you borrow money from Department A to Department B has got to pay back A with interest.
Correct. And I think to add on to what Bill has said, that's done in the public. It's done. It cannot be done by myself. I don't have that authority as the manager, nor does any individual single commissioner. So that's something that has to go on an agenda. In advance of that information is provided to the clerk's office. And at the end of the day, it's just not that money is loaned from one fund to another, but it actually goes into our financials as a liability. So as Bill said, is if we're going outside to borrow additional money, those lenders can look at that and they can say, hey, you're borrowing money and you already lent money, let's say from fund A to fund B. They're going to want to make sure that, we're adhering to whatever those requirements are, those terms are, the money's being paid back. We're not leveraging more debt, let's say, for example, to dig ourselves out of a hole. That'd be a really, really bad situation. Right. So, it's all transparent. It's there. It's done in the public. It's done. It's taken. Those actions are taken. Now, people may or may not agree with that in the public, but that doesn't mean that it's been misappropriated, and it doesn't mean that it's been done illegally.
Okay.
It's all within the confines of what Florida statute allows, as well as government accounting standards.
Okay. So just to clarify, say the commission the county needs to take money from account A, we'll say the building services fund, to pay for, I don't know, parks or some bizarre thing.
Right.
And they don't have the money to do it for the parks. The commission's got to vote on it.
Right.
Is that correct? They've got to vote on it at a public hearing. And that's how that has to go. It can't just be, hey, Bill, just grab the money and put it over in the other account.
Absolutely not. No, there's a budget amendment goes in there, voted on. It has to be the majority of the commissioners vote on that, and then that's put in place.
And again, I would add to that as the comptroller, we've got to have Bill's sign off. If the clerk, as the comptroller, objects to that, then that process stops until the clerk is satisfied. Now, the board could take additional steps, under their separation of powers to do it. But again, we would want to have the clerk of court, sign off on that, because he, as he said a number of times, he's the individual that actually has to make sure those funds are transferred.
Okay. Very good.
Yeah. And I point out to the commissioners on a regular basis, when I was first elected clerk, which they don't tell you all this when you've worked there and you're running. And
yeah,
so we go to our first, they have new clerk academy where you go over in different various places, Tallahassee, and they teach you everything about the clerk's office. And so we're in there, everybody's happy. It's the very first, literally the very first meeting, and they have somebody up there talking about statutes and everything that rules the clerk's office. And we're like, oh, this is going to be, so we're all chatting with each other and getting to know each other, other new clerks and everything, get a cup of coffee, and you sit down. And the very first thing they tell you, they have an attorney up there that says, well, you as clerk of court are personally liable for any misappropriation. I was like, everybody puts their coffee down, like, hold on, what did he just say? So that is one of the ones that, and the title of that talk for the day is, what keeps you up at night? And as clerk of court, believe me, that is something that every one of us in the state take serious. And that's something that, we look at and I mean, on a nonstop basis of making sure that the pennies balance.
Right. Well, good. All right. So at least we got some answers on that. Now, my last question when it comes to that is, if somebody does have evidence or proof that such money is missing, who do they give that to? I mean, would that be a situation you just go to the FDL?
All right. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to stop it right here. It's just a little bit long. You can listen for yourself. Basically what he says is that they're setting up the county just appropriated money to set up an inspector general department within Bay County. So it's another layer of foxes, right? And if you were to have evidence of misappropriation of funds, then they're going to have a hotline that you can notify the county that you have evidence of misappropriation of funds. That's how it basically ends. But I will say, to Brian Russ' credit, he did ask good questions. Like I said, his follow-ups were lacking, but that's just because he doesn't know what I know. And there is more hard evidence that you will see that is going to blow you away. There's so much more to the story. And I'm going to share it with you when the time is right and the mood is proper, as Sammy Davis Jr. used to say. I want to show you one more time state statute about the money that they just talked about, that they were borrowing from. They were using the builders. You just heard it. They were using the Builder Services Fund as a bank. They can't do that. They said all of their funds are like one pool. They just they have, what did Bob Micah, the county manager, called it? They float money all the time. They float money. What you're looking at on the screen is Florida Statute 553.80, Section 7A. These fees and any fines or investment earnings related to these fees shall be used, not spent, used solely for carrying out the local government's responsibilities in enforcing the Florida Building Code. Does not say and as a bank. I cannot believe that they are on the radio today and admitted to doing that. That is unbelievable. Also, I am scheduled Thursday morning to sit with Clerk of Courts, Bill Kinsall, and the budget director to ask questions. And to the county's credit, they said, come on, Bernie, we always like to see you and talk to you. And so I'll be there with some questions that I have to ease my mind that these things didn't happen and that there's no such thing as a forensic audit that emanated from this lawsuit. And I might have a few other questions too, just maybe. Now, all of this is a big deal because of two things. None of this would be happening but for two things. One, the recent affidavit application for the search warrant on GAC a year ago that was unsealed. And that is, the FBI has alleged criminal activity with elected officials and other officials. That's a big deal. And that's got these guys on their heels. They have to answer questions that they thought they weren't going to have to answer. Also, because there's an election and Griff Griffiths was the chairman of the county commission at the time. Now he's running for state representative. And before I go, I want to remind you about the two candidates I am supporting. One of them is the guy running against Griff Griffiths, Brian Cloudis. And this is a paid endorsement.
While getting to know the residents of Bay County, I observed a pattern of complaints about corrupt career politicians, people born into politics, buying their way into politics, and creating self-serving policy for themselves, their families, and their friends. It's time to shake things up and get an America First patriot in office, one who is for the people and of the people.
I called that a paid endorsement. I should have called it a paid ad because I was endorsing Brian Cloudis before he bought advertising. And like Mary Coburn, more of you running for office should pay for advertising, if I agree with your positions. I'm not taking your money if I think you're the wrong person for the job. But I'll tell you who's the right person for the school board, the only really strong conservative running for school board. Here is the best candidate for that.
If you're fed up with parents being kept out of the loop in our schools, political nonsense crowding out basic education, and Bay District Schools, with its $500 million budget, spending too much money on contractors and consultants instead of on the students themselves, then vote for Francis Keys Gordon for school board on or before August 23rd.
And if you support if you appreciate my efforts and you want to support my independent work, here's how you can do it. I survive on crowdfunding and on sponsorships. And the Liberty Lounge, which is an actual studio, does cost money. So I sure appreciate those of you who support me and those of you who stand and link arms with me so that I can do this for you. I couldn't do it if I was on the radio. I couldn't do it if I was on the news. And I won't do it. I'll continue to do this way. And if you want to support my efforts as little as $5 a month, this is how you can do it. It is anonymous. It's easy, and you can quit at any time. Patreon.com/Bernie Thompson is where to go. Also, thank you as always to the Unknown Patriot. Remind you of the Gong Show for those of you old enough, the Unknown Comic. The Unknown Patriot, thank you so much. And I'm out of here. I had to do all of that today because of that radio show. I will say again, I was surprised Brian Rust actually said my name. I didn't think he was allowed to. His questions were good questions. His follow-ups were lacking, but again, that's because he doesn't know what I know. But I don't have too much criticism for that interview. I do think that the two county men who went on there said some super, super interesting stuff. Much more to follow soon. Thank you for being with me.